Okay, so I'm going to show you how the pieces move. This first row right here, these are called pawns. They move one space at a time, except for on their first move, you can choose whether they move one space at a time or two. Pawns can only attack diagonally. So when any other piece is in a pawn's path on a diagonal, that pawn can attack that piece. The next piece I'll show you is called the rook. It looks like a castle tower. The rook can move as many spaces as it wants, but only in straight lines. And the rook attacks in a straight line. It can move from left to right, forward, or backwards. The next piece I'll tell you about is called the knight. It's the one that looks like a horse. This is the most unique piece on the board because it doesn't move in a straight line like all the other pieces. The pawns can only move forward, one space at a time, or two on their opening move, and can only attack at diagonals. The rooks can move as many spaces as they want, but only in a straight line forward, backward, left, or right. The same is true with the bishops, but on a diagonal. The knight, however, is the only piece on the entire board that moves in a strange little pattern. It moves 3 spaces in one direction and 1 perpendicularly. It could move 3 spaces forward and 1 to the left or the right, or it could move 1 space forward and 3 to the left or the right. It can also even move backwards. And that's also how it attacks. Again, the bishop moves in diagonals, as many number of spaces as it likes. And it also attacks on diagonals. It too can move forward or backward. Then there's the king. He's the most vulnerable piece on the entire board, only capable of moving 1 space at a time, although he can move in any direction he chooses. And finally, the queen. She, like the king, can move in any direction. However, unlike the king, she is the most powerful piece on the board, in that she can move in an unlimited amount of spaces. Well, what have I done here? Remember, the pawns take on an angle. Now, aside from these basic movements, where pawns move 1 space at a time, or 2 on their opening, rooks move as many spaces as they like, but only in a straight line. Knights move in a funny L shape, in any direction, including backwards. Bishops move on angles, an unlimited number of spaces. The king is the weakest piece, moving only 1 space at a time. But in any direction. The queen is the most powerful piece, moving as many spaces at a time as she wishes. Those are the basic moves. But we also have a couple of strange, sort of secret moves. I told you that on its opening move, a pawn can move 2 spaces. Well, if on that opening move, the pawn moves 2 spaces and passes another pawn in the process, this pawn that has been passed is allowed to en passant, which is French for in passing. What that means is, even though this piece, this pawn, which has just passed this one, is no longer on a diagonal from it, I can still take it. So I'll do it again. When a pawn moves 2 spaces on its opening move, and in the process passes through this vulnerable diagonal position where this other pawn can take it, this pawn that has been passed is afforded the privilege of en passant, which means it can take the first pawn that passed it. Kind of a funny rule. I've been playing chess since 1986, and I just learned this when I started playing online. I thought there was a glitch in the website, or that my opponent was employing some sort of hack or cheat. I even wrote to the website complaining about it, but it was just my ignorance. I didn't know the rule. Another really unique rule is called castling. It's a defensive tactic that can be used when there's nothing between your king and your rook. If there's nothing blocking the path between your king and your rook, and you're not in check, you can take your king and place him on top of your rook. Do you see that white square? The white outline around the rook lighting up? That indicates that it's a legal move. So you take your king, place him on top of your rook, and they switch. This is called castling. It can be beneficial when you're in a pinch and you're afraid you're going to be attacked. You just take your king and place him on top of your rook, and they castle. So those are the basic moves. If you can memorize those, you can learn anything else you need to about chess. Of course, strategy, that takes a long time. But once you have this down, you're on your way.